soon.
Netflix's new documentary Springsteen on Broadway gives viewers a really intimate and personal look at rock legend Bruce Springsteen. I'm Zach Laws of Gold Derby, and with me right now is that film's director, Thom Zimny. He's directed a lot of Bruce Springsteen concert films, and he's been nominated for directing and producing this one. First of all, let me just ask you, Thom, this movie shows us sides of Bruce Springsteen we've never seen before as he's performing. I wonder what about this documentary stands out from the other concert films that you guys have done before?
I think what made this experience really unique was to try to capture this magical thing that's really hard to put into words, which was the experience of Bruce being on stage on Broadway. The theater itself held a certain tone and presence that made the idea of filming it a new challenge. And right from the beginning, I had a dialogue with Bruce and John about how we would use camera and how we would present this show differently and how the camera would move. But also I wanted to be aware of what was going on when you saw the show and the presence of the theater and the ambience. Bruce's feet walking across the stage of that wood stage had a certain musical tone to it. I didn't want to lose those details in the filming. And I really wanted to use camera in a way that was very different than all our other concert films. I wanted to make sure that camera would cross into the space of being directly next to Bruce. So you would see details that even the best ticket on Broadway couldn't give you.
What's so fascinating about it? Just give us a little bit of background for people who aren't aware. I mean, this started out as a Broadway show, and then it became a movie. Just tell us a little bit about the sort of transition from stage to screen.
Well, actually, this started out as first Bruce had a concert with President Obama where he sat and took his book, Born to Run, and he played songs and read sections from the book. Then it developed into this idea of a stage play. So the whole journey of this film starts with the book, which was an amazing autobiography where he deals with the details of his life in New Jersey and his musical journey. And then it went to the place of him translating that for the stage. And I watched and listened very closely to Bruce hone that show and would go every week, every few weeks, and just sit in the audience as an audience member. And I was watching Bruce make the show tighter, but also seeing how it was playing live. And then we got to a place of deciding to make it a film. So it really starts as a journey of book, stage play, and then film.
And it really is fascinating. I mean, as a lifelong Springsteen fan, you hear stories from him that you've never heard before, and coming from his own mouth, it's really fascinating. You've known Bruce for a long time. You've done several of these films with him. Talk a little bit about what that relationship is like between the two of you.
Well, the relationship for me is just so incredibly inspiring because every chapter there's new music, new ideas, and as a filmmaker, this is what you look for. And working with him, he has such a strong visual sense. And I love collaborating with him. We're working together now on a project where it's new music. The beauty of Springsteen on Broadway was Bruce again brought these new challenges to me as a filmmaker and was open to conversations, ideas, and really pushing everything that we had done before. And John Landau has a big part of this too. And the dialogue that the three of us have makes it, for me as a filmmaker, really inspiring. And I'm enormously grateful for this collaboration. His stage show and his music, I can stand there and take it in as a fan, but then also I have this other job that is the greatest job in the world, which is to be able to share in the music. And I thank both of them for that trust.
He's been doing this for almost 50 years. What is that quality that Bruce has that makes him so endurable? I mean, all these decades later.
Well, I look at Bruce's body of work, and what I find inspiring for me, and what I recognize again and again, whether I'm looking at an old still or archival footage, or just recently working with him, is that same laser focus on getting across the music and the narrative. And there's a commitment there, and that commitment can be traced in the earliest footage of Bruce. When you see Bruce in 1978, it's the same guy who was working with me on Springsteen on Broadway, which is you're really spending a lot of time thinking about the details, and you're really pushing everything that you can, both with camera, lights, music, sonic, landscape, all the things that come together, and really trying to let the music do the talking, but also not get in the way of the beauty of his writing and the magic that is Bruce. So he inspires me enormously as a filmmaker and an artist, and I just recognize that the same guy that started in 1973 is the same Bruce is working on the films with me now.
What's so fascinating about this is the way that he tells these stories. I mean, he's a very fluid storyteller, you know, not just through his songs, obviously, but also through the passages of his book that he's talking about. And you really get a sense for, you know, the New Jersey home and his upbringing and all this stuff. Was it frightening, I guess, to sort of to make so much of this just dependent on one man, you know, as opposed to trying to, you know, cut to archival footage or things like that?
I think it's a great question whether or not, you know, the whole idea is that, is this a terrifying thing to just be filming a man in front of a microphone with a single guitar? And what am I going to do as a film director to enhance and take us through this Broadway experience? Well, with the beauty of Bruce, it's very simple. I need to do things that are felt but are invisible. And that means I don't cut away to an audience. That means I don't get in the way visually of the space that he's creating. So in many ways, I understand that fear, but I had to rely on the power and the beauty of Bruce, the performer. Because if I captured that and I got out of the way meaning no special effects, no close-ups of someone listening, no tears in the eyes of an audience member, no clapping along, I made this a world that you stepped into. And one of the great moments working with John Landau was to start the film with this close-up, and it was this discussion of like no preamble, no walking through backstage, no, just sit down in your chair and the show begins. That was a really pivotal moment of discussion, because it also gave me ideas for camera, to bring the camera in from a wide to a medium to a close-up, so that you would feel the slow progression of Bruce's ideas without a lot of cutting. Again, trying to be invisible and be in sync with Bruce and in pocket with him, and not take the viewer out of the experience of the overall film.
There was an event that kicked off Netflix's Emmy campaign where Bruce was there and Martin Scorsese was there talking about this film. And Scorsese was talking about your filmmaking approach, not cutting away to the audience, keeping it so intimate, and you know, starting off with that shot of the close-up. I have to wonder, I mean, what was it like having the most renowned film director working today praising your work like that?
For me, that was one of the greatest moments. Having both of them sit there and discuss a film that I directed and worked on, I wouldn't let myself dream that. And as a filmmaker, I have enormous gratitude to have that experience. I have enormous gratitude to have that experience and also take in that conversation. It was a great film conversation where they not only reflected on the work that I had done with Springsteen on Broadway, but I could see these two people that I admire very much, two people who I've studied in my early days of filmmaking, have a film chat. And that was a great moment to take in. And I have enormous respect for the body of work on both artists. And to be in that space of discussion or being referenced that way in the making of the film was a great honor. And you know, those were two guys that early on I went to for inspiration, and I still do to this day. And you know, again, I really come to a place of being really happy and grateful.
You've directed several of these concert type documentaries. I wonder, first of all, what got you into doing that specifically? But also, how do you feel you've grown from like your first film to this one? Like, what have you learned along the way that's helped you create a movie like this that is so intimate and so kind of personal?
I think the journey for me as a filmmaker to land at the place of filming Springsteen on Broadway. You take all the experiences you have in the cutting room. I started out as an assistant editor, an editor. I had worked on things like The Wire, and The Wire was a great example of learning and working with different directors. And another, master of script and screenplay, David Simon. And being around that energy, you take in and learn so much. So when I come to these films as a film director, I take in the full history, and I take in the history of the background that I had watching people work in documentaries and also narrative film. And I've learned so much in my dialogue with John Landau and doing the basic research of studying film. And I'm very hungry to always push the genre. So if it's a concert film, I'm not going to rely on just the language of a couple of cameras set up and returning to those cameras, and the mind shuts off. You sort of know the layout of the landscape, the cinematic landscape, and I'm always trying to push it. And I also feel like Bruce has been amazing in giving me opportunities to do music videos, to do full-length documentaries, and then also to do a concert film. I've shot a couple of concert films with him. And it's funny, it's not something that I would do outside of Bruce, because I feel like the Bruce singing a song on stage is very much similar to the approach I would take for a dialogue scene in a movie.
Yeah. You are an Emmy-winning editor for another one of your Springsteen collaborations. You're also a Grammy winner, I should say. What has that recognition meant for you? And also, I mean, the recognition for this film to get the amount of Emmy attention that it's gotten.
Well, it's been a tremendous amount to me, and I'm so proud of the Emmy and Grammy win that I've had in the past with Bruce. It's also just the idea of having all these years with Bruce, and the idea that he could also be part of that, celebration of the work. It's enormously important to me, and it's a great honor to be part of the Emmys. And it's something that as a filmmaker you dream about, and you don't let yourself dream too much about it, but you focus on the work. And when you land at this space, it's really quite nice. And I think with Bruce, every time I get one of the films, I start from the beginning, and I don't really rely on the full history of the award side of it. I really take in that, okay, we're on to a new journey, and just try to keep myself grounded in that space of the work. And then when these things happen, it's an enormous bonus, because it's very exciting for all of us, and we're really excited about the Emmys, and it's been a great experience.
And what are you working on now? Anything in the pipeline or you've completed that you can tell us about?
Sure. I have a film coming out shortly. It'll be streaming on a major platform on Johnny Cash, and it's called The Gift, the journey of Johnny Cash, and it's Johnny Cash's life. And it's something that I actually had Bruce do an interview for. And then in September, I'm to the Toronto Film Festival. I've co-directed with Bruce for the second time. We made a short together, but this is the first time, a feature-length film called Western Stars, and that'll premiere in Toronto. And that deals with his new album, which is a completely different direction than Broadway, and again, one of those amazing surprises to stumble upon in the landscape of filmmaking.
Well, I certainly look forward to watching both of those. Tom, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the Emmy nominations.
Thank you again. Thanks.
Thank you. And thanks to all you at home for watching. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons below, and make sure you visit us at goldderby.com for all